Hi everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. So, if you're struggling to get over an encounter with a sociopath, whether it was a romantic relationship or some other involvement, keep this in mind. Sociopaths are losers. They are not worth any emotional energy that you're spending on them, or the pain that you feel. I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I'll give you 10 reasons why sociopaths really are losers. This is a live streaming show, and I'll answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Now, to ask a question, please be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. All you have to do is click the subscribe button. Okay, so probably the sociopath has you all twisted up. He or she has you feeling like you did something wrong, you let them down, and the problems are all your fault. It simply isn't true. I want you to really internalize this. I want you to get to the point where you realize that the sociopath is not worth your emotional energy. And here are 10 reasons why. Number 1, sociopaths cannot love the way you do. Now, we're talking about people who could be diagnosed with antisocial, narcissistic, or psychopathic personality disorders. The root of these disorders is an impaired ability to love. These people cannot feel empathy like you do. They are not interested in caregiving, which is a critical component of real love. People diagnosed as antisocial or psychopathic are not capable of love at all. Number 2, sociopaths cannot be trusted. So, what is it that sociopaths really want in life? Power and control. Their objective is always to win, whatever that may look like at the moment. So they always have an ulterior motive, and for that reason, they can never be trusted. Here's number 3. Sociopaths are empty inside. They have no real passion. They may have a temporary obsession, but they do not care deeply about any person, thing, place, or ideal. Without any real depth, they're like caricatures of human beings, cardboard cutouts, creatures without any substance. Here's number 4. Sociopaths have no real friends. They have minions, they have co-conspirators, they have dupes. But because of items 1, 2, and 3 that I just mentioned, they do not have friends. They really are alone in the world, and in a way, it's kind of sad. Number 5, sociopaths have no real family. Yes, they have parents, spouses, children, and relatives, probably including you, but no one involved feels a sense of family. They'll never be there for you unless, of course, there's something in it for them. They do not have anyone's back. The sociopath will just take advantage of all their relatives, and any relatives who are not themselves disordered will feel abused. Here's number 6. Their schemes fall apart. Sociopaths are always coming up with get-rich-quick schemes, grandiose plans that depend on other people's money. Sometimes the plans never get off the ground. Sometimes they do get started and then sputter to a halt. Sooner or later, the schemes usually fail. Here's number 7. Sociopaths have financial problems. Even when they have a job or a profession, they often have financial difficulties. They get fired, they lose contracts, they get sued, they run up debt and don't pay their bills. But often, when there's a money crisis, it's other people who pay, not them. Here's number 8. Sociopaths have legal problems. many sociopaths are criminals. In fact, the definitions of antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy refer to criminal behavior. But even those who aren't arrested for crimes are frequently involved in lawsuits, divorces, and child custody battles. None of this really bothers the sociopaths, but it will certainly bother you. Here's number 9. Sociopaths crash and burn. They may be racing along for a while, living on the edge, maybe even for years. But at some point, their unconscionable behavior catches up with them. You might call it karma. Their financial empires collapse. They end up estranged from everyone in their lives. They may finally be arrested. Sooner or later, for many sociopaths, it all falls apart. And here's number 10. Sociopaths tend to die early. Promiscuous sex, drugs, crime, violence. This is how many sociopaths live. So whether it's health problems or accidents from risky behavior or angering the wrong person, many sociopaths end up dead. And those who don't just keep on exploiting and manipulating until they eventually run out of targets. If anyone takes care of them, it's because of a sense of duty, although I'm not sure that the duty is warranted. So, if you're struggling to break the bonds that you feel with a sociopath, refer to this list. Really, they are not worth your aggravation. So, that's what I have prepared for tonight so far. Next, I'll answer your questions. And as I said, please be sure to subscribe. That's how you can answer questions or send me a chat message. You need to be a subscriber for only 1 minute to participate in chat and ask a question. And it really does help us when you subscribe because it helps boost the distribution of Lovefraud. So you're helping to spread the word about all the dangerous sociopaths who live among us. And you'll also be notified about all our new videos. We've also implemented Super Chat, which offers you the opportunity to contribute to Lovefraud's work. And I really appreciate all the contributions that we've received so far. So if you'd like to do that, please click the $sign in the chat window and slide the button to the amount that you'd like to contribute. So, wow. Does anybody have any questions? I don't see that we have any so far. So hopefully that we do. I think today this is like an important topic when we're to really understand that there's not going to be a good outcome if you're involved with a sociopath. It's just kind of like it's always going to be trouble. It's always going to be a problem. And it's interesting because I'm working on my senior sociopath book, as I've mentioned on a few occasions, and getting to the end there. And it's just, I did say in this presentation that sometimes they crash and burn, die young and everything, but plenty of them live to their old age, and it just doesn't change. It doesn't get any better, So if you're in a position where you're feeling like you owe something to this person or you feel obligated, it's just never going to change. So, spare yourself the aggravation. Oh, we have a few comments. Let's see what we have here. Okay, so Laura says, I feel like you're talking directly to me. You described him to a T. My issue is I can't get over him. The problem probably is, now I'm assuming this is a romantic relationship by the term get over him, but the problem probably is that what you feel is an addiction. Relationships with sociopaths are highly addictive. They just are. In fact, I did talked about this recently in one of my previous videos, and There are scientists who believe that all romantic relationships are addictive. And so, when you fall in love with somebody, you get totally swept up in it, and you do things you normally wouldn't do, and there's a whole list of criteria that show the similarities between falling in love and any other type of addiction. And I think that when you get involved with a sociopath, it's even worse because of the way they pour on the love bombing most times. There are, I've heard of cases who don't, but typically that's what they do. They overwhelm you with attention and send you all these presents, which you find out are stolen from somebody else. But they really pour it on, and so what happens is this psychological bond that you feel gets very, very strong, and consequently, you actually have a physical and emotional and psychological addiction to the relationship. So I would suggest that that's how you frame it, and realize that these relationships are very addictive, and you have to treat it just like any other addiction. If you ever gave up smoking or alcohol or anything else, you know that it can be difficult, and there's a couple of things that you need to do in order to succeed. One of which is make up your mind that you're definitely going to solve this issue and get over the addiction. And then you have to go cold turkey, which we call in this context no contact. And then you have to take it one day at a time, because often it's just too hard to think, oh my God, I'll never see this person, I have to cut him out of my life forever. And it's just too big, and it's just too overwhelming. So what you want to do is make up your mind that, okay, I'm not going to reach out to him, and I'm not going to think about him today. And then you do the same thing the next day. And then you do the same thing the next day. And the longer you're able to keep this going, the more his grip on you will release. So no contact is key. Taking it a day at a time is key. And also you want to do the emotional work, because the reason they latch on to us typically is because we have some kind of a vulnerability. So it's worth the effort to figure out what that vulnerability is in you and to figure out how to solve it. Okay. Okay, so how do sociopaths operate with their sociopathic siblings? Well, it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes they become partners in crime, typically on trying to rip off other family members, especially if there's some kind of inheritance involved. Or they turn on each other, because sociopaths have no loyalty, no real loyalty. They're always out for number one, which is themselves. So if they have the opportunity to cooperate with a brother or a sister for whatever the agenda is, then they'll do that. But if they perceive that they'll be better off, dumping the brother and sister and going on their own, they have no qualms at all of doing that. So they can cooperate, they can be disloyal. So it's just a matter of what the circumstances is, and they can go back and forth. Sometimes they might cooperate on one thing, and then they have a falling out, and then so one sociopath says, "Oh, here's another opportunity," and I'll drag my brother into it or my sister, and then they patch it up and just move forward. So, but essentially, they use each other like sociopaths use everybody. Okay. Why do sociopaths blame everyone for their problems? That's just a really key characteristic of what a sociopath is. You might try to delve into their psychology and think that, some people think that they have they're essentially, have got a poor self-image or something like that. I'm not sure I buy that, but essentially they just have no sense of responsibility. So nothing is ever their fault. It's just an ingrained characteristic. In fact, it's actually a very important one to notice, especially if we're talking about a romantic relationship, because when there's a romantic relationship, typically what they're doing is, they shower you with attention and affection. They're love bombing you. They're telling you how wonderful you are. You feel like they're your soulmates, and in many ways, when you meet a sociopath, you feel like you've met your dream come true. Except for this one little problem where they're always blaming everybody else for whatever their situation is. So it's really a key indicator that you're dealing with a sociopath when they can't take responsibility or refuse to take responsibility for any of their actions. So I don't know that I'd really try to figure out why they do it, but just understand that if you come across somebody who can't accept responsibility for anything, this is a massive red flag, and so you should really pay attention to this person's behavior and their other traits. Okay. Okay, so Shauna says, co-parenting with her ex-husband is awful. I have to deal with him, otherwise he would be a distant memory. Yeah. Yeah. So you do the best you can. In those situations, since you do have to deal with this person, what you want to do is emotionally disengage as much as possible and realize that he is what he is. He's not going to change. Nothing you can do is going to change him. You do what you can to protect your kids and raise your kids, but get to the point where whenever he starts the next rampage or whatever, you just kind of roll your eyes, although probably not at him because that would set him off more, but just know that, oh, here we go again. You can't take it personally, so you just need to figure out a way to disengage. Okay, so Angelica says, also, do you know if sociopaths realize their children are disordered? Yeah, sometimes they do. In fact, sometimes they're just kind of ambivalent about their kids. They don't really care about them. Sometimes they can't be bothered with them. But there are some who actively try and make the kids into little mini-me's, trying to, turn them into people just like themselves, which is really pretty scary. So, it depends on the individual. It depends on how well they know themselves. There are sociopaths who are aware that they are disordered. Sometimes they have been, dragged into therapy even when they were young by their parents, or went with a spouse, or sometimes court ordered, and they're aware of their diagnosis, and they're not stupid. They can look up and what the traits are and everything. So there are those who are aware of the diagnosis, and sometimes they're proud of it, and so yeah, sometimes they actively try to turn the kids down the wrong path. It's pretty sad, but yeah, sometimes they do that. Okay. All right, so Doug says, oh, hi, Doug. I've spoken with you before. What would you recommend, since I know my parents are psychopaths? No contact. I know who they are, and I've accepted them, but they still abuse me. Yeah. If you're in a position to have no contact with them, sure. Why continue to allow yourself to be abused? Because they are not going to change. And, there are those who, since I assume your parents are up in age, because if we're all the same age and they're older, there are plenty of people who are children of psychopaths and feel the responsibility to care for them in their senior years, or put it this way, arrange for them to be cared for. So if you're in that situation where they need to care, find a way to do it without getting involved. I mean, I just wrote a bit in my book. This one woman relayed the story that she liquidated her mother's estate and got her 24-hour care. Get them in a home or something like that. If you have that obligation. Now, if you are not obligated to take care of them, then and you can just walk away, then fine. It's hard because everybody wants to think that their mother and father love them. All your life you want that. But I can tell you, I mean, I have a good friend who took in her mother when the mother was very old and on her last few years or months or whatever it was, and to the end hoped that the woman would finally say, I love you, and you're a good daughter or something. She never did it. Absolutely never did it. So don't hold out hope. Recognize what they are, and if the best thing for you to do is to separate yourself, then yeah, go ahead and do it. Okay. All right, so ecstasy. Oh, ecstasy, I get it. What do you recommend everyone stay off dating apps to avoid sociopaths? Well, that's kind of hard. Dating apps are definitely full of predators. It's like Christmas for sociopaths. They're on there. They're throwing out all their hooks. They're seeing how many people they can reel in. So you do need to be aware that people lie. That there's just plenty of predators on dating apps. By the same token, people have found partners on dating apps. So I actually have a webinar that talks about dating after a sociopath and offers some tips for how to do it. But the main thing is to know that they're out there, and if you start to get a feeling, or if something doesn't make sense, or you catch a guy or a woman who is lying or doesn't appear to be who they seem to be, then you need to pay attention. And you also need to be pretty cagey, because what happens is that what a lot of sociopaths do is that they study your profile. They, if it's not on the dating app, they go to the Facebook page or something like that, and they really figure out what it is that you're looking for. And then when they meet you, or when they approach you on a dating app, they all of a sudden, they're just like you, and you have so much in common. And they do this on purpose. So it's a calculated seduction. So you just need to be aware of that. You can use dating apps. My brother met his wife on a dating app. I know other people who have, so it can work, but you just have to be cautious. I would absolutely recommend not doing long distance dating. Even if you use a dating app, please make sure that whoever this person is within your geographic area, so that you can see them on a regular basis. Because long distance with a sociopath, it just doesn't work. You have no idea what's going on, and you could get yourself in real trouble with that. Okay, so Gilatina says, my ex-lover is a sociopath. He won't let me go, and he keeps blackmailing me into talking to him. Threatens to release nude photos. He will keep doing that as long as you allow it. And You might have to hope that he's bluffing and call the bluff, but he may not be, because a sociopath will have no qualm about putting out the nude photos. So I suggest you check out the laws where you are. There are some places where it's illegal to do that. It's called revenge porn, and they could be prosecuted. So I would suggest that you look into the laws where you are, and find out if you have the option to prosecute him if he does something like that. But you have to break it off, because he will never let you go. You have to be the one to decide that you're done with it. And you could also look into stalking laws. Maybe what he's doing could be considered stalking. So you definitely want to take a look at that. Okay. Oh, we got a super chat from Nobi Brooklyn. Thank you, Donna, for your knowledge and sharing. I watch all your videos all the time. It's so nice to be on your live. Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate the contribution. It really makes a difference for us. All right. So what else do we have? Oh, okay. So Noreen asks, why do their eyes turn black when they go into a rage? That's actually a physiological phenomenon, and it means that their body is being flooded with adrenaline. And one of the things that happens, it's part of this old fight or flight thing. That when we were all cavemen and chased by saber-toothed tigers and that kind of thing, anger causes a physiological reaction that prepares the body for battle. And one of the things that happens is that your pupils dilate, and the original reason was to be able to have a lot of light come in so you could see clearly what was going on and what you needed to do. So it's actually a physiological reaction related to that. And what you want to do is recognize that this means that they're poised to take action. So if you see those black eyes in a rage, that's a warning sign that you really need to be careful and figure out a way to disengage and get yourself out of that situation. And that is the biological reason for it. And it has to do with getting ready to do battle, and you don't want them to do battle with you. So if you ever see it, then definitely make a change. Oh, Shauna, thank you so much. Appreciate the contribution. Okay, so Marcia says, the ex-narc that I knew had a severely mentally ill younger brother. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was a senior in high school. Any relationship between narcissism and schizophrenia? There's not necessarily a relationship between the two disorders, but it is possible for people to have multiple disorders. In fact, there's a disorder that's a combination of schizophrenia and psychopathy, and they call them a schizopath. And I mean, these people are really dangerous, because they can be violent and hearing voices. So, that's a really bad combination. So even though the two disorders are not the same, it is possible for somebody to have multiple disorders. It's called a comorbidity. So in any event, those kind of disorders run in families. So this is a family that you don't want to get involved with. Okay. Oh, Gilatina. He was a long-distance relationship. We were talking for 6 months. I am married, was going through a rough time, and he seduced me, blocked his number everywhere, and changed my number. And he's making different accounts. Okay. Yeah. Well, if it's a long-distance relationship, evaluate how much he can really hurt you. Now, of course, I guess what this guy could do is threaten to send pictures to your husband. So probably the person you most need to consider is your husband, and whether or not you should talk to him about what happened. Because if your husband knows about it, then the guy's threats are nothing. And the other thing that you want to do is that if you were going through a rough patch and which led to you being willing to engage in this affair, you could use that as an opportunity to try and figure out what's wrong with your marriage and how to fix it. So I would take a look at that. I mean, there was some reason why you were vulnerable to this. And also, I can tell you, I've spoken with lots of people who have been targeted by sociopaths who never ever intended to do anything to hurt their husband or wife. But sociopaths are good. Now, they just have this way of getting into your head and getting under your skin, and people end up doing things that they never ever thought that they would do, and it has to do with the manipulative power that a lot of sociopaths have. So you might want to educate yourself about that, and I'm sure he targeted you. There are lots of sociopaths who pick married women simply because they can get away with it, because married women, typically aren't going to make a public fuss. So maybe that's what happened to you. Okay. Well, everybody, thank you very much for joining me this evening. It's had a nice chat, I'd say. So I'll be doing another show next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. So please come back, bring your questions, and we'll talk some more. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye-bye now.